Hello guys, in this episode we're going to take this long exposure photo and turn it using Photoshop CS6 and Color Efex Pro into that. See you! Hello guys and welcome to episode 28 of my photography, Lightroom and Photoshop tips. My name is Serge Ramelli and I live in where? I live in Paris, France. Great city. Okay, last week I showed you how to make a book using Lightroom 4 and their partnership with Blurb. So check it out if you want to make a book. In about 10 minutes time you should be able to make your first book. This week I was on Sunday with my wife and kids in a Musée d'Orsay, a beautiful museum in Paris. And when we came out, the sun was starting to be pretty interesting and I wanted to take photos, but there was tourists everywhere. And I had seen a lot on the web, people doing long exposure photos and they were like 3 minutes long exposure. I never went more than 1 minute. So how do you do long exposure photo? First you have a tripod, then you put your camera on the B mode. You take a remote because you cannot touch the camera itself. And then you have to use one of these filters. This is an ND1000 filter and this is an ND400 filter. Now just as a little info, these filters can be expensive, but the ND400 filter I bought for 250 euros. That's very expensive. And this one I found on eBay for $30 or $40, very cheap. So I will put a link on the description in the YouTube video, examples of filters you can find on eBay. And I tell you, the photo that we are going to retouch was done with a $30 or $40 filter. So I can tell that it's not as well constructed as this one, but it still does the job if you're, if money is an important factor. Anyway, so you put on the filter and the trick is, so if you want long exposure, you put on the filter and you put, like F18 or F20 as a shutter speed. Because as the shutter, I'm sorry, not the shutter speed, because this will make a very long exposure. The ND filter is just a black piece of glass where no light is coming through, and closing the shutter is going to make even less light coming through. So that's how you get long exposure. And then I just try it, I try 1 minute, I try 2 minutes, I try 3 minutes. Anyway, so this is what I got after 3 minutes, interesting photo. And this is what I got after the retouching in Lightroom and Color Efex Pro. So let me show you how we do the retouching. So here is the photo that we're going to retouch. So we're going to do 3 steps. First step Lightroom, second step Photoshop, and third step Color Efex Pro. So as I said in the introduction, this is a long exposure photo. If you look at it, it's 180 seconds at f18. That's a very long exposure. That is 3 minutes that of the photo being taken. And f18, I did it at f18 because even with the ND1000 filter, I needed to go with f18 so that there was so small light coming into the camera that it would force this long exposure. Okay, so let me press I to take this out and let's do just a standard retouch. If you follow my podcast, you know how that works. So I'm going to open up the shadows. Okay, and I'm going to bring down the highlights. Now that's the good thing about long exposure is that the clouds are completely torn apart like this, completely fuzzy, like, if there was a blur, a directional blur apply on it. I love that. Okay, next we do the white and black as usual, which is you hold on the Option key on your Mac or on the Windows and you go right until you see some white dots, a little bit of white dots. Okay, not so much about that. All right. And now we do the same thing with the black, but we go a bit further with the black. So we start seeing a bit more black dots. Okay, so that gives us the basics, the basic contrast. Next, I'm going to open up the exposure a bit more of the overall photo. And the sky is way too bright. And the reason it's way too bright is that I shot right into the sunset. Sunset was here. So I've got a very bright sky. It was really hard for the camera to see the rest. All the tourists were gone because it's a long exposure, which is something great. So now I'm going to take a filter. I'm going to go to exposure, put it minus exposure, and I'm just going to bring some more details. So I'm going to lower the exposure. I'm going to lower the highlights on the filter to get even more details, and I'm gonna put some contrast. Okay, and maybe back down, yeah, not so much exposure. So that's, you know, before the ND filter, after the ND filter. Major change, major change. All right, next I'm gonna boost the clarity. I think that's gonna work well with that photo. And on the I'm gonna go on shadows on the white balance, because on shade. The reason I go on shade, it's a bit warmer. It's a bit too much warm, but yeah, let's keep it that way. No, let's not. I'm gonna go back as shot. I don't think I'm gonna touch that much. I'm just gonna warm things up manually. The reason I do that, just a little bit, is because I still want to get some blue. I want to mix up between the blue tones and the warm tones. Okay, I'm gonna boost the contrast. All right, and maybe boost up a bit the exposure a little bit more. Okay, now the sky is still too bright again, so I'm gonna take back my ND filter. Now that I'm gonna back it down again a little bit. Yeah, something like that. I really want, you know, that we can see the sky. Okay, now check it out. When you shoot at f18 with an ND filter, you can have the cleanest sensor in the world. You will still get these spots. So what I usually do is I take the biggest one using the spot healing tool real fast under Lightroom. Okay, like that. It works really well on this type of spots, you know. It works really good. And I'm just taking care of the big ones, you know, and I'm zooming in at 100%. Usually they are really like in the corner, and then the smaller one, you know, like there is like major ones I do in Lightroom. The smaller ones I do in Photoshop, and I do it with a Gaussian blur. I'll show you in a second, because I think it works great with this type of long exposure. Or you can just do it in with using the clone tool, or there's many tools. I'll show you several ways, but I like to do the big ones in Lightroom, and yeah, I just like to do that. And I'm not going to spend so much time being in detail, you know, but you get the idea. Yeah, I'm just going to leave a couple of spots. I just want to take the biggest one out. And the reason is because I'm at f18. When you have a shutter, your shutter that's very closed, any spot, even invisible to the eyes, is going to be visible on the yeah, basically on the screen, on the photo. It's quite crazy how it goes. Oh, there is a big one there that I missed, and there that I missed. Okay, you know, they're just so obvious that I want to do something about it. All right, but I would spend more time. You know, I did spend more time when I actually retouched that photo, but I'm not finished. So now that's the basic retouching. What else do we have to do? I'm gonna go for noise reduction. Let's zoom in. Usually long exposure photos are very noisy. Check this out. And usually there's a lot of color noise in long exposure photos. So I'm going to do a bit of noise reduction, like maybe around 30. That's the luminance. That's the little grains. And here you can see all this color, you know, like red dots, blue dots. I'm going to use the color slider. I'm going to go 100. So that's going to take out all the color noise. See, now there is almost no noise. And then I'm going to put my sharpening around 75 to make it more sharp. And I'm going to put my masking around 50. What masking does with sharpening, sharpening is going to sharpen everything in your photo. And masking, what it's going to do is that it's not going to apply any sharpening on anything which is very flat, like for example these stairs here. Anything which has a lot of texture, for example the sky. That's a good principle. If you don't put this mask option, what happens is that if you have a lot of noise in the sky, it's going to make a lot of little grains. You know, we don't need to do sharpening on very flat parts like the sky. So that's what masking does. Masking does is that it's going to put the attention. Actually, if you press the Alt key, I think you can see it exactly. You see anything that is white is going to get sharpened, and that's it. And anything which is black is not going to get sharpening. So you see there is no sharpening being applied on the sky, only on the contour of the objects. So that's what masking is important. We only want sharpening on the contour. Okay, so now we did the noise reduction. Oh, last but not least, profile. I'm going to enable the color profile because I have a serious vignetting problem. And then I'm going to go into manual. and I don't like how these buildings are not straight. So let's see first, let's rotate a little bit to make sure that you know, our photo is pretty straight. And then let's do vertical to get, you know, I want the buildings to be straight. Let's click on constraints cropping. Okay, it's still not very straight. That's actually my rotating. I always do it by eyes, you know. I just want to make sure, you know, that these buildings are pretty straight, that this is pretty straight. It's not bad. Maybe a bit more rotating that way. Very little. And maybe a slightly more vertical. Yeah, something like that. Check it out. Before the lens correction and after the lens correction. Ooh, I like it. Okay, now post-crop vignetting. Tack, tack, tack. Let's, you know, let's make this a nice cropping, a nice vignette around it. Okay, so we are pretty much done in Lightroom. Let's go to Photoshop. So right-click, edit, edit in Photoshop CS6. So the only thing I'm going to do in Photoshop itself is that I'm going to keep on cleaning up the sky. And then I'm going to go and present to you Color Efex Pro, which I love. Okay, so I'm going to put this on its own layer. And basically what I'm going to do, let me zoom in a little bit here. Check this out. You see there is still a bit some like small spot here. If you want to get rid of them real fast, you can, well, actually, you know, the best is to you just use this. You can use a spot healing tool, but one thing that I do, which is a bit faster, especially if you took out the noise in your photo, you see there is almost no noise, is you go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm just gonna do a little Gaussian blur on this until I see no spots. I see a little bit of spots here. Yeah, 12 will do it. Okay, so I have, this is fully Gaussian blurred. I press the Option key and I click on the Mask tool. That creates a black mask, so nothing, you know, anything which is blurred is invisible. I press B for brush. I take a white brush with opacity 100, and I just brush real fast on anything which has a, you know, a little bit of a spot. And as it's low in exposure, you know, you cannot see where I brush, and it goes real fast. You know, it's a very fast way to do it that I like to do and take out anything. Now it doesn't work if you have a spot which is close to here. When you have a spot which is close to here, you have to go back on the basic layer, take the stem tool, which is the S key, right, and just option click the clean part, and just click on what you want to take out, because you cannot use this trick only works on fully blurred area. Okay, so that was the only thing I wanted to do. Now I'm going to merge both of these layers by selecting both and pressing Command E. All right, Command J to duplicate the layer. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to Filter, Nik Software, Color Efex Pro 4. Now, Color Efex Pro has two versions. There is a simple version and there is a pro version. I think one is $100 and the other one is $200. To be honest, I've only been using Color Efex Pro since I bought the full version, the $200 version, because the $100 version doesn't have so much stuff which I find very useful. That's just my viewpoint. Okay. Now I'm going to do, next week I'm going to show you some other tricks with Color Efex Pro, so this is just a little introduction. Here you have different filters. You can filter by my favorite, landscape, nature, weddings, portrait, architecture, travel. I'm going to go for all, so you've got all kind of filters. Now the first one is the black and white filter, so you can just click on it. That's a B color filter. You know, you have a color on the top and on the bottom. I'm not going to show you every filter. I'm just going to show you 2 or 3. One which I like a lot, it's called tonal contrast filter. I like what it does to the photo. It really, so I've selected it. Here you can see the result. If you want to see the before and after, you can just click on compare. That's before, that's after, before, after. See how it gets, it has a way of doing the contrast which I like. But in the same time, I'm going to add a bit of saturation. And yeah, it's just going to make the whole photo more contrast. I just like the type of contrast that it does. Okay, now you can add several filters. If I now click on another filter like sunlight, which is one that I want to use,
it's going to erase, it's going to replace the one we've done before. So let me go back on Pro Contrast. That's the one we were onto. No, not Pro Contrast, sorry, Tonal Contrast, which is, I got lost here. Where is my tonal contrast? Tonal Contrast. Here it is. Oh, by the way, a little trick. If you want to, if you like that filter, you want to use it often, you just click here on the little star. And next time you click on favorite, it's going to appear there. So this one I'm going to put on favorite because I'm going to use it a lot. Okay, so let's go tonal contrast. So it's here. I'm going to, yeah, basically leave it at that. I just wanted to add a bit of contrast and saturation. And then I'm going to click on add filter. Okay, and then I'm going to click on sunlight. Now sunlight, I like what sunlight does. Sunlight is going to give a sort of a glow, you know, a little glow to it, and I kind of like that. But on the other hand, it took out the contrast, so you can just add it. I can add it this way. You can add back the contrast. So you see, I have one layer which is the tonal contrast, and I have a second layer which is sunlight. Okay, I'm going to even make it a bit warmer, and I'm going to add more contrast, even more. Okay, so it goes a bit the opposite of HDR. You know, it's a bit soft, and you know, it just give a. I like the mood that it creates. If you think it's too bright, you can bring down the brightness. You just have to try out, you know, all these settings and what it does. And if you keep on building layers, what happens is that it's going to take more time to process because every preview is going to have to show you all you've done so far. Okay, and one more thing I'm going to use, so I'm going to click on Add Filter, and the next one I'm going to add is Vignette. Vignette, which is just basically like the vignette in Lightroom. It was just to show you that you can also do it here. I'm going to adapt the age, the opacity. I'm going to make it less. It's way too strong. I want a much lighter vignette. And you can choose the vignette you want. Now it's processing all filters, so it's taking a bit of time. So let me show you before the vignette, after vignette. It's a bit strong, so I'm going to lower the opacity. Okay, and I want to show you something else. Okay, I'm going to click on Add Filter. So vignette, I'm going to add to my favorite. There's one that I love also, which is the Detail Extractor. It's called Detailed Extractor, where it's here, Detail Extractor. And what it does, it's kind of the opposite of the sunshine filter that we did. It's going to get all the details to come out. See, if I boost it a lot, it's going to give like some sort of HDR look. I can even boost the contrast. Now it's going to use a lot of processing time. And right now I'm applying this all over the photo, like everything gets detailed. Now it's going to take a while, but you see how you start seeing funky things on the sky. I only want to apply this detail extractor. Let's say, for example, here on the stairs, which is closer to the viewer. Well, if you want to do that, you can just click on Add a Control Point, which is here, and I'm going to add a control point. Okay, now it's getting really slow because I've used up a lot of filters. Okay, let me click here. Okay, sorry. And when you click on this control points, the effect, instead of being applied everywhere, is only being applied in a circle that you can see here on the first slider. You have a little slider. So I'm only applying this detail extractor to this part of the image, okay? And the strengths, I can do it here, basically. So you don't see much. And if I boost the detail extractor, I make it like very strong, it's only gonna apply here. Now it's too strong, so I'm gonna back it down. I just want to get some real good details here and maybe add some contrast. Okay, I just want the foreground here to have some good details compared to the blur here. So you have a contrast, not just in colors, but between very detailed and very blurry. Okay, my contrast is a bit strong. So that's the idea. If I click on compare, I can see the before, after, before, after. See what a change, you know, what a big change. So now I click on OK, and it's going to process all we've done in Efex Pro and apply apply it on this one photo. Now, I know it's a bit of a short introduction on Efex Pro, but next week and the week after, I'll show you some other use of Efex Pro on other projects with different values. But you know, it's a great plugin. It's a bit expensive, but if you're really into photography, it's really worth it. Okay, so it's processing the image and it's going to put it on its own layer. But basically, I'm done with it, and that's what I love. If you're in a hurry, or if you lack of imagination, or if you want some inspiration, you just try out some filters, and you will be impressed. Okay. So hold on. Here it is. It's saving the photo. It had a lot of work to do, and now it's on its own layer. That's the new photo. That's the before, and that's the after. If you think the effect is too strong, you can just lower the opacity of the layer, But to be honest, I kind of like it. And then I'm just going to save it. I'm going to close it by pressing Command W, save it, and it's going to re-import it in Lightroom. And now I could keep on working in Lightroom, but I like the results, so I don't think I'm gonna do more. Okay. So yeah, that's the final result of this long exposure photo. Usually they're done in black and white, and I wanted to do this sort of very colorful version of it. Okay, guys. Before I let you go, just to remind you that I have until end of this week, you can get minus 30% on all my training packages, Lightroom 4, Photoshop, and Photoshop and Training Lightroom package. So for example, on all my training, it's $49 instead of $70. On Photoshop training, it's $28 instead of $40, and Lightroom 4, $21 instead of $30. So my training is not very expensive, but I think you can learn a lot. I like to share in any case. And if you click here on podcast, you have all the past episodes from the start, and you can see in big what the end result of my podcast is, because usually my podcast is one retouch, and you can even purchase for €3 if you want the raw file. One of several raw files. For example, this one is 3 raw files. If you want to do it at home, and you can even print the photo, make a big print for you. When I give the raw files, you can do anything personal with it, but you cannot use it for commercial purposes. But if you want to make a huge print for your room, you can. Okay, guys, let's get back to the studio.
All right, guys, so I hope you liked that tutorial. This week's inspiration is a lady called Athena Carey. She lives in Geneva, and I met her over a hangout with Trey Ratcliffe, and I just love her long exposure photography. She does this type of long exposure, 2 to 3 minutes. This is her website, and she's also very strong on Google+. I really invite you to check her out, because she really inspired me to do that photo I showed you earlier. Okay, so as usual, if you can help me share that podcast, if you have a blog and you can post on it, or if you can just share it on Google+, that helps me getting known. I'm sure it can help out some photographer. Goodbye, guys, and see you next week.